everything you think you know about Leonardo da Vinci is wrong? Not the paintings, not the inventions, but the man himself. The history books show you the Mona Lisa. They show you the flying machines. They parade his genius like a museum exhibit behind glass, distant, untouchable, superhuman. But what they don't show you, what they've carefully hidden away in the margins of his notebooks, in the scattered fragments of his thoughts, in the confessions he made to himself in mirror writing, is that Leonardo da Vinci was a mess. A beautiful, brilliant, tortured mess who struggled with the same demons you face every single day. And that's the Leonardo we need to meet today. Because buried in his failures, his doubts, his controversial beliefs, and his most private thoughts are 6 truths that nobody talks about. 6 secrets that make his genius not just admirable, but achievable. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand Leonardo differently, you'll understand yourself differently. Part 1. The Power of Sacred Incompletion. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that art historians whisper about but rarely shout. Leonardo da Vinci finished almost nothing. Not an exaggeration. Out of the 20 or so paintings attributed to him with certainty, he only fully completed about 6. The rest? Abandoned, left unfinished, walked away from. The Adoration of the Magi? Unfinished for over 500 years. St. Giraud in the Wilderness? Incomplete. Even the Mona Lisa, his masterpiece, he carried with him for 16 years, constantly tweaking, never quite satisfied, never quite done. Now here's where it gets interesting. Leonardo wrote this in his notebook, and I'm paraphrasing from the original Italian. Art is never finished, only abandoned. But historians love to stop there. They frame it as artistic perfectionism, a nice, tidy explanation. Except Leonardo didn't stop there. In another entry, written late at night in his backward scrawl, he wrote something far more revealing. I have offended God and mankind because my work didn't reach the quality it should have. Read that again. Here's arguably the greatest genius in human history, and he's drowning in the same inadequacy you feel when you look at your unfinished projects. But here's the twist nobody tells you. Leonardo's failure to finish wasn't a character flaw, it was a survival mechanism. You see, Leonardo understood something profound that we've forgotten in our age of ship it, done is better than perfect hustle culture nonsense. His notebooks weren't just notebooks. They were 7,200 pages of active thinking. Every drawing was a conversation with reality. Every unfinished painting was a question he was still asking the universe. While everyone else was rushing to complete commissions and collect paychecks, Leonardo was doing something revolutionary. He was treating his entire life as one continuous, evolving work of art. So here's your first truth for building resilience. Your unfinished projects aren't evidence of your failure. They're evidence of your evolution. That business idea you started and abandoned, that novel sitting in your drawer, that skill you learned halfway, maybe they weren't meant to be completed. Maybe they were meant to change you, to teach you something, to move you from point A to point B in your development. Leonardo didn't finish the Adoration of the Magi because by the time he'd sketched it, studied it, and lived with it, he'd already extracted everything it had to teach him. The painting had served its purpose. The completion was in him, not on the canvas. Stop measuring your life by what you've completed. Start measuring it by what you've become.
Part 2. The Defiance of Observation over Authority. Now we're going to talk about why Leonardo was considered dangerous. Not quirky, not eccentric, dangerous. In a notebook entry from around 1490, Leonardo wrote something that could have gotten him killed. Anyone who conducts an argument by appealing to authority is not using his intelligence, he is just using his memory. You have to understand what this meant in Renaissance Italy. The Catholic Church controlled knowledge. Aristotle and the ancient Greeks were considered unquestionable. To doubt authority wasn't just rebellious, it was heresy. And here's Leonardo, a bastard child with no formal education, no Latin, no university credentials, basically saying, I don't care what the books say, I only care what my eyes tell me. But here's the part that never makes it into the documentaries. Leonardo didn't just reject authority, he actively antagonized it. There's a recorded incident where a respected scholar told Leonardo that Aristotle had proven that heavier objects fall faster than light ones. This was settled science, accepted truth. Leonardo's response? He didn't argue, he didn't debate. He climbed to the top of a building and dropped 2 balls of different weights simultaneously. They hit the ground at the same time. Then he turned to the scholar and said, essentially, "Your Aristotle is a liar. My eyes don't lie." This is what real intellectual courage looks like. Not blind skepticism, not conspiracy theories, but the willingness to test reality yourself, even when everyone tells you the answer is already known. Leonardo dissected over 30 human corpses, illegal and sacrilegious at the time, because he refused to let some ancient text tell him how the human body worked. He spent hours watching water flow because the experts couldn't explain turbulence satisfactorily. He studied bird flight with obsessive detail because authorities said human flight was impossible, but his observations suggested otherwise. So here's your second truth. The world is lying to you, not maliciously, but confidently. Everything you've been told about how success works, how careers are built, how relationships function, how creativity happens, it's all second-hand knowledge passed down until it calcifies into truth. But Leonardo is screaming at you across 500 years, don't believe me either. Go look for yourself. That voice in your head that questions the conventional wisdom, that instinct that says, but what if everyone's wrong? That's not your insecurity, that's your intelligence. The resilient mind doesn't ask, what does everyone else think? It asks, what do I observe to be true? Stop outsourcing your perception to experts, influencers, and authorities. Become your own primary source.
Part 3. The deliberate embrace of confusion. Here's where Leonardo gets really weird, and where most people misunderstand him completely. In his notebooks, scattered among the drawings and inventions, Leonardo kept lists, strange lists. One list was titled Things to be Investigated, and included entries like, Why is the sky blue? How does a woodpecker's tongue work? Describe the tongue of a woodpecker. What causes yawning? Observe the goose's foot. If it were always open or always closed, the bird couldn't make varied movements. Random, right? The scattered thoughts of a distracted mind? Wrong. In another entry, Leonardo wrote something that reveals his true method. The knowledge of all things is possible. Not some things, all things. But then he added this crucial line. Learning never exhausts the mind. It is the mind that exhausts itself by refusing to wonder. Do you see what he's doing? Leonardo wasn't distracted. He was strategically confused. Every single person around him was trying to become an expert in one thing: painting, sculpture, architecture, whatever. Leonardo looked at that approach and thought, that's a cage. So he did something radical. He deliberately threw himself into confusion. He pursued questions that had nothing to do with his career. He studied everything that made no sense, because he understood something we've forgotten. Confusion isn't the absence of knowledge, it's the presence of growth. Think about it. When are you actually learning? Not when you're comfortable in your expertise, not when you're staying in your lane. You're learning when you're confused, disoriented, when nothing makes sense, and you're frantically trying to build new mental models to contain the chaos. That discomfort? That's your brain literally rewiring itself. Leonardo was addicted to that feeling. He chased confusion the way other people chase comfort. And here's the controversial part. He believed confusion was superior to certainty. In a letter to the Duke of Milan, Leonardo wrote, I am never satisfied until I know the why behind the what. And when I discover the why, I immediately doubt it and search for the why behind that why. infinite curiosity, permanent uncertainty, deliberate destabilization of his own knowledge. This is why he could move from painting to engineering to anatomy to music to urban planning to hydraulics. He wasn't a Renaissance man because he was smart. He was a Renaissance man because he refused to settle. Your third truth: stop trying to eliminate confusion from your life. That new skill that makes no sense, that subject outside your field, that question nobody can answer, that's where your next breakthrough lives. The resilient mind doesn't fear confusion, it weaponizes it. Every time you feel lost, disoriented, in over your head, you're not failing. You're becoming Leonardo.
Part 4. The Radical Solitude. Now we need to talk about something that makes people uncomfortable. Leonardo da Vinci was desperately, achingly alone, and he chose it. In his personal writings, not meant for publication, just mirror-written thoughts to himself, he reveals a man who deliberately isolated himself from society. He wrote, "If you are alone, you belong entirely to yourself. If you are accompanied by even one companion, you belong only half to yourself." Harsh, right? Almost cruel. But wait, there's more context that changes everything. Leonardo wasn't a hermit. He had patrons, students, friends. He worked in bustling workshops. He attended parties at court. But he protected his solitude like it was sacred. He would disappear for days, even weeks, with no explanation. One contemporary wrote that Leonardo would sometimes stand in front of a painting for 4 or 5 hours straight, just staring at it, not touching the brush, then leave. His students thought he was procrastinating. He wasn't. In another fragment, Leonardo explained, "While you are alone, you are entirely your own master. With a companion, you were but half your own, and the less so in proportion to the indiscretion of his behavior." He's not saying people are bad. He's saying something far more profound. Your mind is a sacred space, and most people are trespassing without realizing it. Leonardo understood that genius, real transformative insight, doesn't happen in brainstorming sessions. It doesn't happen in collaborative workshops. It doesn't happen in coffee shops with your mastermind group. It happens in solitude, deep, protected, almost aggressive solitude. Because that's when you stop performing, stop explaining yourself, stop adjusting your thoughts to make them palatable to others. That's when you can think dangerous thoughts, weird thoughts, thoughts that make no sense yet. Here's your fourth truth, and it's going to sting. You're not lonely because something's wrong with you. You're lonely because you're supposed to be alone right now. Not forever, not as punishment, but because whatever you're building, whatever idea is trying to come through you, it needs space. It needs silence. It needs you to stop crowding it with other people's opinions, expectations, and energy. Leonardo's radical solitude wasn't about hating people. It was about loving his work more than he feared being alone. The resilient mind understands that periods of isolation aren't signs of failure, they're sacred incubation. Your best ideas aren't hiding from you, they're hiding from the noise around you. So stop apologizing for needing space. Stop feeling guilty for canceling plans. Stop believing that constant connection equals success. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is close the door and disappear.
Part 5. The Acceptance of Cosmic Insignificance. This one's going to challenge everything modern self-help tells you. Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate achiever, the Renaissance ideal, the genius among geniuses, believed he was fundamentally insignificant, and it set him free. In his notebooks, alongside his inventions and anatomical studies, Leonardo would sometimes write observations about nature that reveal his cosmic perspective. The sun does not move. The earth is not the center of the celestial sphere, but only the center of gravity and of the lunar orbit. For context, this was written around 1510, before Copernicus published his heliocentric theory. Leonardo figured it out independently through observation.
But here's what matters: the conclusion he drew from this. In another entry, he wrote, "Man has great power of speech, but what he says is mostly vain and false. Animals have little, but what they say is useful and true. A small truth is better than a great lie." Then this absolutely devastating line: "The average human thinks they are the purpose of all things, but they are merely witnesses." Witnesses, not protagonists, not the center of the story, witnesses. Do you understand what Leonardo was doing? While everyone else was desperately trying to prove their importance, their divine purpose, their special place in God's plan, Leonardo looked up at the stars and thought, "I'm dust, temporary, irrelevant in the grand scale." And instead of despair, he felt liberation. Because here's what cosmic insignificance gives you: permission. Permission to fail, because the universe won't notice. Permission to experiment, because there's no grand plan you're messing up. Permission to create weird art, ask stupid questions, and waste time on projects that don't matter. Leonardo's greatest works came from understanding that they were meaningless. The Mona Lisa won't matter in 1,000,000 years. The flying machines won't exist. The anatomical drawings will decay. So why make them? Because the making is the point, the curiosity, the process, the joy of observing reality and trying to capture it, not for posterity, not for legacy, but for the pure, meaningless joy of doing it. Your fifth truth: you are not the main character. And that's the best news you've ever received. Every crushing expectation you're carrying, every world-changing pressure, every fear that if you don't succeed, you'll have wasted your life, drop it, all of it. The universe is 13.8 billion years old and stretches for trillions of light years. Your success or failure doesn't register. And in that cosmic insignificance lives your freedom. The resilient mind doesn't need to matter. It just needs to create. So make your art. Build your weird projects. Chase your pointless curiosities. Not because they'll change the world, but because you're here, briefly, and you might as well observe something beautiful before you return to dust. Part 6. The celebration of useful failure. Final truth, and it's the one that ties everything together. Leonardo da Vinci failed at almost everything he actually tried to do. And he knew it, and he celebrated it. His flying machines never flew. His bronze horse sculpture, meant to be the largest in the world, never cast. His city planning proposals, ignored. His mathematical proofs, often wrong. Even his successful paintings were considered problematic by his patrons because he took too long and charged too much. By any conventional measure, Leonardo failed more than he succeeded. But here's the entry that reveals everything. In one of his notebooks, he wrote, "I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. But understand this: action without reflection is foolishness, and reflection without action is cowardice. The true path is to fail usefully." Fail usefully. Leonardo kept every failed experiment, every wrong calculation, every sketch that didn't work, not as a record of shame, but as a map of knowledge. Each failure taught him what reality was actually like, as opposed to what he hoped it would be. His flying machines didn't fly, but studying their failure taught him about air resistance, weight distribution, and structural integrity that he applied to architecture. His anatomical drawings were sometimes wrong, but the act of being wrong taught him to look closer, question harder, dissect deeper. Here's what Leonardo understood that we've completely forgotten. Failure isn't the opposite of success. Useless success is the opposite of success. You can succeed at something meaningless, make money doing work you hate, achieve goals that don't fulfill you, become famous for things you don't care about. That's useless success, empty victory. But useful failure? Useful failure builds you. Every useful failure teaches you reality, expands your skills, deepens your understanding, moves you toward work that actually matters. Leonardo would rather fail at flying than succeed at painting boring portraits. And he did, and those failures made him Leonardo. Your sixth and final truth. Stop chasing success. Start chasing useful failure. That project that flopped but taught you about your audience. Useful failure. That relationship that ended but showed you what you actually need. Useful failure. That business that bankrupted you but revealed your real skills. Useful failure. The resilient mind doesn't fear failure. It mines failure for intelligence. Leonardo's notebooks weren't a collection of successes. They were 7,200 pages of productive mistakes. So fail. Fail often. Fail boldly. But fail usefully. Extract the lesson. Document the discovery. Use each failure as data about reality. Because here's the secret Leonardo knew. If you fail usefully enough times, eventually people stop calling it failure. They call it mastery.
So here's what we've learned about Leonardo da Vinci. Not the myth, but the man. He left most things unfinished and found freedom in completion. He rejected authority and trusted his eyes above all. He deliberately pursued confusion because it led to growth. He chose radical solitude to protect his creative space. He accepted his cosmic insignificance and found liberation. He celebrated useful failure as the path to mastery. These aren't the lessons they teach you in art history class. These are the inspirational quotes on motivation posters. These are the uncomfortable, controversial, deeply human truths of a man who changed the world not by being perfect, superhuman, or divinely gifted, but by being courageously, stubbornly, beautifully himself. You don't need Leonardo's IQ. You don't need his talent. You don't need Renaissance Italy or wealthy patrons or perfect circumstances. You just need his permission. Permission to leave things unfinished. Permission to question everything. Permission to be confused. Permission to be alone. Permission to be small. Permission to fail. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't a genius because he was born special. He was a genius because he gave himself permission to be fully human while reaching for the infinite. And that permission, it's yours too, right now, today. So take it and see what you build.